Good morning, Stewart's Chapel. This is Brother Don Pierson, and Don Counts here. And the sun is setting on this beautiful fall, cool evening. And this is, what is this day? Tuesday. And here we are at Tuesday, Tuesday. We're in James chapter 3, verse 9 through 12. This ought not to be. That's a phrase that is found in this section of Scripture. This ought not to be. I have found that phrase, or similar to this phrase, is found often in Scripture, especially in the New Testament. This ought not to be. With it, talking about the tongue, we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the similitude or image of God. Out of the same mouth proceed blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring send forth fresh water and bitter from the same opening? Can a fig tree, my brethren, bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Thus no spring yields both salt water and fresh. I don't know whether you know what my name of my farm is. The registered name of my farm is Living Springs. And the reason for that, the year we moved there was a severe drought in Lincoln County. All my neighbors ran out of water. At that time, we thought they were all on spring water. There was no county water at that time, and that whole area basically just dried up. The creeks dried up, the ponds dried up. We were on spring water. Right outside of, by the side of our home is a hillside, and right there, just within no more than 100 yards from our house, is a cave that the spring flows out. Neighbors started coming, asking if they could fill up their jugs with water because their spring had gone dry. They came. That spring just kept on running and kept on running. Soon more neighbors came, and then more neighbors came as the drought continued, and in that area more and more springs dried up. One of my older neighbors, who now has passed, towards the end of the drought said to me, he said, "You know, I've been living here all my life. My family has too." He said, "That spring, nobody can remember that spring ever going dry." And it didn't. During that whole drought, it continued. It got very, very slow, but it continued to give. It wasn't the only spring on my property. As time went on, I began to discover that my farm was covered with living springs. Now, there are some that are wet weather springs, but I am blessed with abundance of water. I have 4 creeks and 4 ponds. One of those creeks will go dry, but the rest of them will continue to have water. God has blessed me with clean, fresh water. Now, nobody would have came to that spring and got water from it if it had been salty. They would have tasted it and they spit it out. Salt water is not good for your body. It'll kill you, actually. But fresh water gives life. Our tongue is just like the rest of us, called and washed in the blood of Christ. It should give life and not death. If we choose to use our tongue to tear someone down, to be malicious, to be cruel, filled with anger and bitterness, if we choose to do that, if we choose to use our tongue for death, then my friend, that is a faith that is a faith without works. And that kind of faith is dead, just like the spring that gives birth to poison. Be very careful. Maybe you and I need to remember and memorize James 1:19 again. To be quick to hear, to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.